What if we asked ChatGPT to write a high school essay on the meaning of the Star Wars trilogy? Or what if we asked DALL-E to make a Renaissance painting of Yoda? Instantly, you're setting in motion a set of algorithms running on special chips built in Taiwan and now housed in a data center somewhere deep in the woods of Virginia.
Data centers are popping up all over Virginia, but not without controversy.
No surprise, that whole process is burning a ton of energy, which means we're releasing gases like CO2 into the atmosphere every time we use generative AI. But how much CO2? Companies like OpenAI, Google, and Meta, they know how much energy goes into answering your question or generating your Yoda painting. After all, they're paying for that electricity. So maybe we can just ask, how much energy in watt hours did this query require to answer? Here we go. Between 0.1 and 1 watt hours. But there's a lot missing from that calculation. So let's dig deeper. There's not a ton of independent research that's out there on exactly how much energy generative AI products use. That's because it's really hard to tell if you're not the company that's actually using and paying for that electricity. But there is one study done by a tech company called Hugging Face. And they did this with researchers at Carnegie Mellon University. Hugging Face is like GitHub for AI models, if that means anything to you.
No, that means nothing to me.
Their website hosts a bunch of code for AI chatbots. And Hugging Face looked at a bunch of AI models that were running on its own site. These were basically earlier, smaller versions of things like ChatGPT and Meta's Llama that you might be using today. The study asked the question, how much carbon gets burned running 1,000 queries on each model? And does it matter what kinds of tasks the model is doing? The study shows that, in general, generating images is much more energy intensive than generating text. On average, however, the study nets out at about 0.5 watt hours per query. If that's true, then let's see how much carbon is emitted in a day of AI usage. There are no reliable statistics on how many queries ChatGPT answers, but some estimates have put it at around 10 million per day, give or take. So let's go with that. If each one takes 5/10,000ths of a kilowatt hour, how much carbon dioxide does that make? According to the Environmental Protection Agency, approximately 2.1 tons. That's as much CO2 as you'd burn driving a car from New York to Los Angeles to Seattle and then to Denver. Over an entire year, it's equivalent to almost 2 million miles of driving, which says nothing about the enormous amount of carbon burned in the process of building and training the AI. There are actually 6 stages in the life of an AI chatbot. We've already talked about using the bot, but let's talk about the other big 2. First up, remember those chips built in Taiwan? They're called GPUs, or graphical processing units. An AI model like ChatGPT is loaded with masses and masses of data, and these GPUs allow the model to make the instant, simultaneous calculations that find the relationships between all those data points. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company makes the vast majority of these chips.
The company hopes to meet the need with a new plant in Taichung, but environmentalists say the power requirements of the new plant will mean very high levels of carbon emission.
Taiwan is a small island nation that ranks 56th in population, but 18th in terms of energy consumption. And 6% of the entire country's energy is used by TSMC, the chip manufacturer.
碳排量，我的天哪！
The carbon emissions, my god, it will generate 3.51 million tons annually.
Meanwhile, AI companies want more manufacturers to start making GPUs because Taiwan's industry can't keep up with demand. Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, is reportedly trying to raise about $7 trillion to launch a massive new chip manufacturing company.
According to the journal, it could require up to $7 trillion. That is 7 times the expected size of chip sales in 2030.
He says it's literally impossible to do what he wants with AI without a breakthrough in nuclear energy.
Nuclear power has sort of gotten back into the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a really big trade over the last year, and it comes because tech companies are in a little bit of a bind because of AI's energy demands.
Amazon said it would invest $500 million in nuclear power. It announced deals with Dominion Energy in Virginia and a separate one with X Energy Reactor. Google's parent company Alphabet announced a similar deal with Kairos Power. Microsoft is also partnering with Constellation Energy to restart the nuclear power plant at 3 Mile Island, which was closed after a partial meltdown back in 1979.
So that's manufacturing. What about training? Let's go back to that data center in the woods of Virginia. Data centers like this one are basically giant warehouses of giant computers that store giant amounts of data. Those computers need to be fired and running for an AI model to digest and process all the information it uses to interpret your instructions and generate a response. How much energy that all takes kind of depends on how big the model is, what it's going to be used for, and even how efficiently it was built. The only way to really know how much energy training uses is for the people doing it to measure their own energy consumption. Companies like Google and OpenAI used to do this. And they actually used to publish the results. That's where we got these numbers. Training GPT-3 used 552 tons of CO2, or the equivalent of 254 round trips between New York and Los Angeles by car. And that's not a one-time cost. Some models are retrained, or new versions come out multiple times a year, so that consumers like us can keep getting models that are faster or more accurate or can do an even better rendition of Renaissance Yoda.
The artificial intelligence compute coming online appears to be increasing by a factor of 10 every 6 months. Now, obviously that cannot continue at such a high rate for forever, or it will exceed the mass of the universe, but I've never seen anything like it.
Each time, the models have to be bigger, and each time, they have to require more energy to train. AI companies know emissions from energy consumption are a big problem. They're not telling us how big of a problem, information that only they can really calculate. But they are looking for solutions. No, not cutting down on using energy, but making more energy.
Starting on day one, I will approve new drilling, new pipelines, new refineries, new power plants, new reactors, and we will slash the red tape. We will get the job done. We will create more electricity also for these new industries that can only function with massive electricity.
But maybe that's the wrong approach. Maybe we should be asking if all of this AI-driven energy demand is really worth it. As Google executives themselves say, the greenest energy is the energy you don't use.
You know, there's supposedly a sort of a Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Well, we live in the most interesting of times. The most interesting. Would I rather be alive to see an AI apocalypse or not? I'm like, I guess I'd like to see it. So,